Okay, so welcome back to my channel. This is going to be a recap of The Haunting of Hill House, Season 1, Episode 5, The Bent Neck Lady. So it looks like this is going to be the backstory of Nell. And so it opens with her. She's a little girl back in the house, middle of the night, as it seems like the time when most of these occurrences happen. And this was her first encounter, I believe, with the Bent Neck Lady. So, you know, she wakes up, she hears a noise, she wakes up, and she sits up in the bed, and at the foot of her bed, she sees the silhouette of the Bent Neck Lady. So she, at this point, this lady, she's just in the shadow, so you can't actually see her face. So of course, baby girl screams her little heart out, and then she knows she's with her parents, and of course they're trying to put her at ease. You know, it was just a bad dream, and she was like, "No, I was awake," and it was, you know, what parents do. And so this is how we find out how she ends up on the couch, because if you remember in the first episode, you know, she slept. They allowed her to sleep on the couch, and her mom laid next to her on the floor for a little while. So we have that whole part with them on the couch, and with her on the couch, and then her mom ended up going back to the room, and of course you see where she starts hearing the clock, this, you know, ticking sound, and then she's like laying there hyperventilating, and she's paralyzed, and then she looks up, and then she sees the Bent Neck Lady hovering over her. And so next thing you know, there's a voiceover, and it goes to her as an adult, and she's actually talking to a what he described himself as a sleep tech. So I think she was going through, she enrolled in some type of sleep study, and you know, he was basically talking to her about what she experiences when these things happen. As a person who suffers from sleep paralysis, I can say it is one of the most terrifying things that you can experience. If you've never experienced it, it can be pretty bad. I haven't had any auditory issues with mine, but I did see some kind of sometimes see some things. I did actually do a video about it, which I'll link in the comment section, in the description box, about my most vivid encounter with sleep paralysis. And so he's basically talking to her about the sleep paralysis, and he's asking her if she sees anything or hears anything, and she's, you know, going into that, and he's basically explaining to her what sleep paralysis is. And he says sometimes people see things, sometimes people hear things, and so I mean, at the end of that whole thing, so once you get a good look at the guy, you realize, okay, that guy eventually becomes her fiance, her husband. So, and his name is Arthur. So at the end of that, at the end of the whole discussion, him explaining what they're going to do, he asked her out for coffee, and yeah, so it was a really cute moment. But it's nice to see, you know, you finally see, at this point, you see her happy, because up until this point, you've only ever seen Nell like terrified and afraid, and she'd always look scared and worried. So it's actually a nice change to actually see her smiling, laughing, and just actually happy. I mean, yeah, you saw some flashbacks in some of the memories of her relatives, some of her siblings, but it's good to see, you know, her story at this point. So yeah. Okay, so you see that they're spending a lot of time together, and you know, the next thing you know, New Year's rolls around and he proposes. And it seemed like the night after he proposed, she had an episode with sleep paralysis, and he was like, well, this hasn't happened in a long time. And so he, you know, got up, he helped, and he kind of coached her through it. And the next scene is them at their wedding. And so they're having their dance, you know, their own dance, and people are just kind of standing around, kind of watching them, because they just look so happy and so in love. And it was a really beautiful moment. And so next thing you know, you see Nell dancing with Steve. And so they're just watching Shirley. And they're like, what are they talking about? Why are you watching Shirley? And then you flash to Theo. So Theo and Stacy is boogie-oogie. Like, you know, they're dancing, not like, you know, people are just dancing on the dance floor because it's a slow song. They're, you know, dancing. And so Shirley is sitting in the chair, her and her husband. And it's like, well, mostly everybody is kind kind of staring like, okay. So that was Theo, I guess, coming out of the closet to everybody at one time at Nell's wedding. And so they were just kind of looking at Shirley, kind of just trying to making fun of her. Yeah, she couldn't hear them because they were further away, dancing. But that was funny. And then, they continue dancing. Then she looks over, and her dad is sitting over. He's sitting at a table that's kind of in the back. And it don't seem like nobody's paying Daddy any attention. But she looks over, and she sees her mom standing behind him. Now, at this point, obviously her mom is dead. So whatever this entity is taking the form of her mom. And, of course, that kind of triggered her a little bit, but she was able to get through it, and her and Steve continued to dance, and had a few laughs. Now, I don't know how long it was in between that wedding and this night that, the night they came up where she had another attack. And then he was like, it had to have been a while, because he was like, it's been a while since you've had one. And so he did what he usually do. He tried to talk her through it, and he got up to turn the light on and had some type of attack and collapsed on the floor. And she looks over, and the bent neck lady is standing. She sees the entity standing by the window. So somehow she was able to get the strength, because she was still in the throes of this paralysis, like she was coming out of it. So she was able to slide out of the bed. So she wasn't able to walk yet. So she was able to slide out of the bed and go over to him, but it was too late. And so of course she's distraught. She's lost another person that's very close to her, somebody she loved very much. And now you can hear her talking to a therapist. And they start talking to the therapist. And she basically told him that, the lady killed her mom and killed Arthur, her husband. And of course the therapist is like, no, he had a brain aneurysm. And she's like, no, it wasn't a brain aneurysm. She killed him. And of course the therapist supposedly being the logical, rational one to say, no, he's trying to, he said, he'd be like, it's common when tragedy happens to try to find someone or something to blame. And he he was asking her, so how, so have you seen her since? How, what, basically, when was the last time she saw him? And she was basically explaining, like, she explained to him that she used to see her when she was a kid. And after they left the house, she saw him for a while. She saw the bent neck lady for a while. But when she met Arthur, she hadn't seen her for a while. So that time that she had this reprieve, this moment of happiness in her life with Arthur for a time, and then tragedy strikes. And so they made reference to the house. She was like, yeah, it's all, and basically it all leads back to the house. And she basically let him know that I don't expect you to believe me, but basically I know what I know, because I've been living it since I was a kid. So that was a very sad moment. Because I was about to start asking, like, what happened to Arthur? What happened to this guy? And then we know that was sad. Okay, so Mrs. Dudley is acting weird. So they're back in the house. Nell is back in the house. She's in the toy room, and she finds this old tea set. It's of glass. It's really cute, little antique looking tea set. And so she showed Mrs. Dudley, and she was like, "Oh, this belonged to Jacqueline. Jacqueline Hill was the daughter of the people that lived in the house." And they still have photos of the family hanging up in the home. He said, "This is the mom here, Hazel," and Nell asked if she knew her. She's like, "Yeah, I took care of her. I used to take care of her." He said, "I never understood what she meant, because Nell found in the little set, she found this little cup of stars." And Miss Dudley's like, "I never understood what she meant when Jacqueline wants her cup of stars, but I guess now I do." And so she asked Miss Dudley if she can keep the set, and she was like, "Well, that's fine if it's okay with your mom." And she was like, "Oh, no, because I had a mug before and I broke it, and I'm not supposed to have anything that's fragile, and this looks fragile." And Mrs. Dudley made some comment about, "No, you use your cup of stars and you keep your cup of stars, because once someone takes it, you will never be able to use it again." Or she made some comments to the child. I'm looking at her like, "What the hell's wrong with you? What are you talking about? It's a damn mug." Okay. So she was like, "Okay, but use it, but clean it first, because obviously it's been in this box for forever." So she's downstairs cleaning the mug. The mom walks into the kitchen upset, and she asks Nell to come with her. And so she shows her this wall where the wallpaper has been ripped, and she sees Nell's name written on the wall. And she asks Nell to come with her. And so she shows her this wall where the wallpaper has been ripped, and she sees Nell's name written on the wall. And she sees Nell's name written on the wall. And she sees Nell's name written on the wall. And she sees Nell's name written on the wall. And she sees Nell's name written on the wall. And she sees Nell's name written on the wall. And she sees Nell's name written on the wall. And she sees Nell's name written on the wall. And she sees Nell's name written on the wall. And she sees Nell's name written on the wall. And she sees Nell's name written on the wall. And she sees Nell's name written on the wall. And she sees Nell's name written on the wall. And she sees Nell's name written on the wall. And she sees Nell's name written on the wall. And she sees Nell's name written on the wall. And she sees Nell's name written on the wall. And she sees Nell's name written on the wall. And the mom was like, you know, we've been tasked to care for this house, to fix it up. Why would you do this? And so, of course, Nell was like, I didn't do that. And so she's like, I saw you playing with chalk yesterday. She said, yeah, I was writing on the sidewalk, but I didn't write on the wall. And so Theo walks in and she's trying to figure out, well, okay, what's going on? She's like, well, why don't you tell your sister what you did? She's like, Nell's like, I didn't do anything. And so Theo was like, well, she said she didn't do it. And you can see the mom started having one of her moments, one of her migraines, and they was like, Mom, are you okay? She's like, no, I feel like I have a hot poker in my head. She's like, you know what, Theo, you stay and you have her clean up, and I want to see this cleaned up by the time I get back. And so Nell went over and she touched the wall, and she was like, no, you didn't do it. And she said, I don't know why they're making such a big deal. They're taking the wallpaper off anyway. So Nell proceeds to pull some of the wallpaper off. And then she steps back, and then she's like, and they flash to the wall, and just before Nell, it says, "Come home, Nell." And so it's like, what the hell? So we're gonna find out that this family has some connection to this house. Someone did tell me that they it was a book, but I haven't read the book, obviously. So yeah, interesting. Nellie is creeping dangerously close to the edge at this point, and her and Theo had a falling out. So Nellie is going to pick up Luke. So it's a rainy night, evening, and she's going to pick him up for what she thought was to take him to rehab. Okay, but this bastard, in his drugged adult mind, basically manipulated her, because you know they're twins, and so he basically manipulated her. You know, he knows that she's emotionally vulnerable, and he knew he couldn't call Shirley anybody else because nobody else would fall for even listen to his bullshit. He convinces her, so they pull up, and he said, just stop right here for a minute, on the way to rehab. And she said, why are we here? And so, you see that man over in the white hat? She was like, yeah. He's going to give me something to make me feel better before I go in. And she's like, what the hell are you talking about? So for me, she didn't understand what he was saying. So he basically asked her to buy him drugs so that he can get one last hit before he goes into rehab. So of course she's like, I'm not going to buy you drugs. And he's like, well, that's, I've always believed you. I still believe you. And, you could always tell, Shirley and Steve never understood, but, I know you do. And we've always had this connection, and and this went on and on and on, and basically just manipulated her. So she ends up going over there to that drug dealer, buying him some drugs. Get back in the car. He couldn't even, obviously, I don't know where he would have gone to shoot up. So he decides he was going to strike that shit up in the car. He done pulled his funky socks off, put his ashy, funky ass feet up on her dashboard. And how sometimes drug dealers shoot between their toes so they don't have track marks on their arm. So he did that, and the whole time while he's doing this whole thing, talking some nonsense, asking her if she's collecting any buttons or whatever, her eyes are glued to something, and you don't know just yet. And so they flash to that, and she sees the silhouette of the bent neck lady standing in the street. And so he's calling her, now, are you okay? Are you okay? And she doesn't say anything because she's just locked on to this entity. And so now she's in rehab, she's in therapy, and she was like, I saw my brother a month ago. And he was like, a month ago? She's like, yeah. She said, well, I'm sure you've been there. I'm sure, therapy, you go once a week. Sometimes people who need more help go more than once, but typically you go once a week. He's like, so why are you just now telling me now? How's he doing? So what happened? He said, she was like, oh, he's doing fine. She was like, well, no, he said, have you spoken to him since? She said, no. And she said, so, how's he doing? And she said, oh, he's fine. He's like, so he's trying to figure out, well, if you haven't spoken to him, how do you know how he's doing? It's just, she was like, for the first couple of days, I felt like I had the worst flu at all, because they've always had a connection. So I guess what she was explaining was her feeling some of the symptoms of him going through withdrawal. And so she was like, for the first couple of days, I felt like I had the worst flu of my life. And, this whole thing. And so he said, well, are the meds working? He said, they're working fine. He said, are you sure? She's like, well, what kind of question is that? He said, because you seem extremely upset. And we know after she, we don't know. After she I guess, dropped him off at rehab. She got home and she took all her prescription medications and flushed them down the toilet. So she hasn't been taking the damn medicine. So, as you know, she's back at her apartment with Theo. Theo came to visit under the pretense they were going to go out and have fun, right? Sisters, right? And she ends up telling her that she took him to get drugs before taking him to rehab. And of course, Theo, being a therapist, like, she's like, that's not how you help a drug addict. And she knew she screwed up the minute she did it, but. And so she asked Theo to come there because she wanted to see if she could sense Arthur still in the apartment. And so she asked her to touch the pillow, and she didn't feel anything. She did, and she didn't feel anything. And then she was pointing to where he fell on the floor, but at this point, Theo doesn't know that. So she was like, well, what? Well, why am I touching? She said, this is where he died. And so, of course, Theo was like, and then she grabs her hand and slams it on the floor. And then, of course, Theo jumps up and like, Nell, what the hell is wrong with him? She's like, well, you don't feel anything? She's like, no, I don't feel anything. He's not here anymore. And, she's looking around. The room is a mess. She was like, when was the last time you cleaned? And Theo says, did you tell Shirley what you've done? And so Nell looked at her like, basically, did you tell Shirley what you've done? If we want to get onto that, she's like, what are you talking about? It was basically, she took that money from Steve. So she was like, Theo said something. She said, but I have my limits. She said, only with others, but never with yourself. And she was like, what are you talking about? She said, you've only ever cared about yourself. This Nell talking to Theo. And they get back going back and forth. And she was like, that's fine for you to say when you're living in Shirley's guest house, basically asking her like when she's going to grow up. And so Theo got mad and was like, I thought I was going to come here, we was going to go to the museum and see a movie, go to the beach or whatever, and spend time together. But Theo grabbed her bag and walked the hell out. So they parted on really bad terms. Okay, so they flash to Steve, who's on a book tour, and he's at some local bookstore where he's they do the readings, and then they do the Q&A. So we're at the Q&A section, and so it looks like a couple of people raised their hands to ask questions, but it wasn't about the recent book. It was about one question was about Hill House, and one question was about his family, and he basically said that I'm here to talk about my new book. I'm not going to answer any questions about my family or the house. And so somebody said, I have a question, and you look back, it's Nell. She's losing her. You can see she's spiraling out of control. So she stands up and she lets his ass have it in front of everybody. He's like, why are you promoting something you don't even believe in? I was like, what are you talking about? What now? What's going on? You're charging these people $30 a head to talk about something that you don't even believe in. What did she say? You talk to me like you talk to me so terribly. You treat me like I'm crazy. You treat Luke like he's crazy. You treat Dad like he's crazy. And then you use our stories to make a lot of money. So I want to know why. When she just basically laid into him. So eventually he pulls her to the side. I guess they had a little break or whatever. And he told her ass like, this is not, are you on your medication? She was like, yes. He's like, bullshit. I've gone through all the phases with you. The religious phase, like something, the new age phase, or whatever else phase that you've been through. And you've had, 6 years, 10 years to file a complaint. Why did you come here now to do this? This is my work. You consider this my office. And he basically let her have it. So then you flash to her being in the therapist's office, and she's like, I did what you told me. I finally told him what I really thought. And he was like, huh? He's like, yeah, I drove to someplace, Otis or somewhere, where he was having the little meet and greet. And I just stood up and I said what I really felt. He was like, do you think that was constructive? And she said, well, I confronted him and I'm standing up for myself. He said, well, the goal of this wasn't to confront your family. The goal of this is for you to confront your past. And he was the one that made the suggestion that she go back to the house, I guess, to get some type of resolution on this, on whatever's going on with her. Because I guess he figured it began there, it should end there. And so you see she pulls up to a motel. She pulls up to a motel. And she sat there for a while. She had this pocket watch in her hand that she was kind of looking at. And as she was about to back out, she sees some flashing headlights. And so then she has a flashback of, that was a hotel, the motel, I keep saying hotel, it's a motel, that their father drove to after he had got them all out of the house. And so he got them at the hotel, got the motel, and of course they're like, where's mommy? Why did we leave mommy? What's going on? Where's mommy? And so he gets them into the room. And he said, okay, I'm going to have to leave you guys here so that I can go back to get mommy. And I think it was Theo said, mommy was hurt. And they're like, what do you mean? And so he's basically saying, everything's going to be okay. But of course, he put Steve in charge. He's the oldest. And he gave them a hug. Theo and Steve didn't even bother. And he left. And so then you had Luke talking about, mommy fell. He's like, what are you talking about? She fell. She was having a tea party with Abigail and, who was it? Abigail and somebody else. And she fell in the red room. Like, what are you talking about? And so, Nell said, that wasn't mommy. And so now they're all, like, kind of, sort of, I don't know if they're all sensing that something is wrong, or, when you look at all the things that they've experienced in that house, it's like, and then Theo, what did Theo say? Theo said something, the Lord knows. And, yeah, so you kind of see kind of what's going on after he left after he got them out of the house. Well, ain't that a bitch? Okay, so where do I start? Okay, notes. Okay, okay, so she checked into the hotel, the motel. I keep saying hotel, motel. And she eventually falls asleep, and then she has another one of her episodes. And when she opens her eyes, she sees Luke on the ceiling. And of course, she's like panicked because that's when we get into where she finally was able to get herself together. And that's what we get into in the first episode, where she initially called Steve when he was at the lady's house, who was telling the story about her husband who got into the car accident, and he hung up on her. And then she called Shirley, and Shirley sent her a voicemail. And then she eventually so she leaves a message for Shirley, as we know, because we saw in the first episode where Shirley eventually gets the phone call. So she goes to the vending machine, and as she's walking down the hall to the vending machine, she gets the drink, and then the light starts flickering, and she's kind of looking around, and then she bumps into someone. The lights go out. She bumps into something. It looks like it's the bent neck lady, right? So she falls to the ground, starts screaming. The lights come back on. There's nothing there. Okay, so she gets back to back to her room, and she sees that she has a missed call from Steve. That's when Steve called her to let her know that he had called the rehab facility and that Luke was fine. Okay, so she kind of toiled around a little bit, and finally worked up the courage to go to the house, because she kept saying, it's just a carcass in the woods, it's just a carcass in the woods. And that's what her therapist was telling her, is like, there's just a house, it's a dead house, it's an empty house, it's been empty for forever, 20-something years, so it's really nothing to be afraid of. And so he described it as a carcass in the woods. So she kept saying to herself, it's a carcass in the woods, it's a carcass in the woods. Okay, so she goes to the house, and this house is lit. For this house that's been sitting here empty for 20-some-odd years, it's the middle of the night, wee hours of the morning, really. And it's like every light in the house is on. And so that's when, of course, we see her. She calls her father, and that whole conversation where she tells me he's at home, and he's talking about getting on a plane, go to Steve, that whole thing from the first episode. Okay. So we see her. She somehow has the key to this gate, gets into the opens the gate, drives up, and while she was talking to her father, the light on the front porch was flickering. And then as she got to the house, it stopped. So she walks into the house. Okay, so this is where you see what's real based on what Nellie sees. Okay, so she walks into the house, and it's like it looks like it did when they lived there. The difference is, okay, she's grown. She's still her age. But she hears children counting. And then she sees Luke and Steve. And Steve says, Mom's... no, and then her father comes downstairs. Because Steve and Luke are playing around. The father comes downstairs. And it's like, where have you been? You know, we've been waiting for you. We've been looking for you. Your mom's looking for you. And then Shirley walks up. Still as a kid. So they're all children. Everybody, you know, she's the only person who's aged. Okay. And so Shirley takes her to their mom. So their mom, she takes her to the room where she chewed Nellie out as a kid because she accused her of writing on the wall. And so now you see the mom she's writing, it actually says welcome home Nellie instead of come home Nellie. I thought it said come home Nellie, but she was writing welcome home Nellie. So she's in that room, and the mom was like, I didn't do it. You know, she was basically like she was a kitty, and like, I didn't do it. And the mom was like, oh, I know, you know, I never thought you did it. And so you have Theo and Shirley in the room, also as children, saying that we always believed you. And so the mom was like, you have to get ready for bed. I have a gown in my drawer. So she goes upstairs. And so it's flashing back and forth between what the house actually looks like, which is a hot ass mess. It's been sitting, like I said, it's been sitting there for. So you got rotting wood and all that. It's just a mess. Versus what Nellie sees. So she sees this house as it was. And so she walks on up the little staircase. Goes into her mom's room, gets this gown. She puts it on. And the mom walks in and she's like, oh, you look so beautiful. This time we have to go downstairs. And she was like, go downstairs there for the reception. You know, we've been waiting for you. And so she walks on downstairs. And now she sees Steve. She sees all of them all grown up. So first she sees Steve. Steve's helping her downstairs. Like, I'm sorry for everything that I've said. And they're all apologetic to her, saying that I'm sorry we didn't believe you. And so Theo was there. Shirley is there. And the parents are there together. And so they part. And then you see Luke. And then Luke was like, you know, I told you I'm okay. You know, that it did the trick. And I'm as good as new. Da, da, da. And then Luke moves to the side. And behind him is Arthur. So starts dancing. They start, you know, so she's so happy to see him, and they start dancing, and eventually they start dancing in the room. So in the first episode where I thought it was the mom dancing, that was actually Nell dancing. She thought she was dancing with Arthur, but she, you know, so she was dancing. In her mind, she was dancing with Arthur, but to us, when they flashed to reality, she was just dancing by herself in this busted up house. And so eventually, he kisses her. She opens her eyes. He's gone. And then she sees the little girl in the blue dress. The little blonde girl that Luke saw when he was a kid in the woods, right? Abigail. And so, they walk up. So the mom walks by. Luke is closely behind her. Say, come on, let's have a tea party. Okay, now if we flash back. Remember the last episode where the mom and dad, they were in their room after they gave the hat to Luke and the button things to Nell. And she made a reference to, at the top of the stairs, they had all those, that loose, the rope and all that she said we need to clean up before somebody hangs themselves. Okay, and so they're walking up this spiral staircase. And then so she gets up there. And she looks down and she sees, was it Steve? I think she saw Steve. I don't know if it was Steve or her dad. Okay. And she turns around and her mom is giving her this locket. Now, the locket has significance because that night that Nell, as a kid, slept on the couch and her mom slept out there with her, she saw the mom was wearing the locket. And the locket had a photo of Nell and I think Luke in it. And she told Nell that when she got older, that she could have the locket. So now, here she is all grown up and her mom is giving her this locket, and she puts the locket on, and then she realized that she didn't just put the locket on. She actually put the noose. Those ropes were still there, and she put the rope around her neck. Okay? And so now she's like on the edge, and she's like calling for her mom to help her, and her mom was like, okay, it's time to wake up. And so she kisses her on the forehead, and she falls to her death, snapping her neck. And so now, what blows your mind is that, okay, so the first drop, she snaps her neck. And then she's screaming and she drops again. And she's back in, was it her room where Arthur died. And then she snaps her neck again, and she drops again. And she's back in front of the car where when she that intimacy she saw in front of the car, the lady, the silhouette of the broken neck lady in the car, while Luke was next to her shooting up. And then her neck snaps again, and she's back on the couch as a little girl. And then she drops again, and she's Nell, and then she's the little girl when she initially saw the bent neck lady. So the whole time, the bent neck lady was her. Ain't that about a bitch? I was like, and so you have Nell as a little girl looking at herself as she couldn't make out herself, at least from our vantage point. But it was basically her as a little girl seeing herself dead with a broken neck. That's who she's been haunting herself. This vision of herself is what she's been fighting all these years. When I saw that, I was too through. Okay, I'm like, oh my God, that was deep. Okay, you know what, y'all? It's almost it's 9:30. I gotta go to work in the morning. I'm gonna end this here, and I'll talk to you guys in the next episode.